but we'll deal with it through line upon line, precept upon precept. Joshua chapter 10 and verse 13. Now tell me, sisters and brothers, where this falls into the whole scheme of things. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. This is when Joshua had prayed to the Most High God for the sun to stand still, so it still be light, so he can defeat his enemies. He wanted daylight to remain longer. Again, Joshua chapter 10 verse 13. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. This middle sentence, is this not written in the book of Jasher? Apparently it is, because it's written right here. Okay, this testimony, this witness is also written in the book of Jasher, but it's written here. So we don't have to go to the book of Jasher to verify that it happened, because it's written here in the book of Joshua. 2 Samuel. Let's see where Jasher is mentioned again. 2 Samuel, first chapter. Excuse me, I flip pages here. 2 Samuel, the first chapter, and it's in one verse, verse 13. Actually, we can read 17 just to get a full gist of it. 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 17 and 18, talking about King David. And David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son, because David knew that Saul and Jonathan had died, so David was mourning them. Verse 18. Also he bade them teach the children of Judah the use of the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. So here's the only two instances we hear about the book of Jasher in the Bible, in the prophets. The first thing was in Joshua, where it talks about the sun standing still, as mentioned in the book of Jasher. And in this excerpt in Samuel, 2 Samuel, talking about, it is written in the book of Jasher about teaching the children of Judah the use of the bow. Okay, the sun standing still and the use of the bow. Since both of these are in the Bible as we commonly know it, what's the reason to search out the book of Jasher? Was there anything else that points to the book of Jasher saying that you need to know this because it's super important and it's a salvation issue? I'm not saying that the use of the bow for the children of Judah to use is not important. I'm not saying the sun not standing still is not important. I'm just saying that these are the only two instances where the book of Jasher is mentioned, and it's actually reiterating what's already written here in the canon Bible. Does that make sense? But let's look at the so-called book of Jasher, because you have several books out there in the market can call themselves the book of Jasher. Now, we only read the two instances about the book of Jasher so far, again, in Joshua and 2 Samuel. There's a website called sacredtexts.com, sacred texts, and I'll put it on the screen, .com. And it shows different so-called books of the Bible, lost books of the Bible, etc. One of them is the book of Jasher. And I'm going to go ahead and read just this, I guess, preface. It's only about a paragraph or so, not too far. And I'll try to post it for you all so you can see it too. Now, this is what it says, is that the book of Jasher, this is the introduction, referred to Joshua and 2 Samuel, and we read that, sisters and brothers. Faithfully translated from the original Hebrew into the English. Says who and by who? I guess the publishing rights are Salt Lake City, published by J.H. Perry and Company, year 1887. Now let these publishers or this introduction writer tell you about the books of Jasher. And then, sisters and brothers, you can make your own decision about the validity of this book. We'll go into it, but I want you all to read this for yourselves and see this for yourselves to see if this is even worth further study. This, this is the preference again about the book of Jasher. This is one of the apocryphal books of Jasher. There are several, and in parentheses it says as many as 5. So there are about as many as 5 separate works by this title, all composed much later than biblical times. Wait a minute. So if somebody's showing you right now a copy of the Book of Jasher, they're only showing you 1 in 5 alleged works that are named the Book of Jasher. And they can't prove the one that they have in their hand or any of the 5 already out here are the exact same Book of Jasher referenced in Joshua or in 2 Samuel. The only thing they have in common that they can prove to you is that this is called the Book of Jasher. Well, I can write a couple of sentences on a sheet of paper, bind it in a notebook, and put on the title the Book of Jasher. Does that make it the Book of Jasher that's in the Bible, reference in the Bible? Of course not. So scrutinize these people to tell you that this is the Book of Jasher. Scrutinize them, have them prove it to you. Because apparently the authors or the editors or the publishers of this book is telling you that the one we're reading from right now is only 1 of 5 works called the Book of Jasher. And they even admitted that all of these were composed much later than biblical times. So they're telling you right then and there that these books are written much later than what's considered biblical times. Check this one out. This particular one is a translation of a Hebrew book printed in 1613. And Sapir Ha-Yasher, the Hebrew title of this book, means the Book of the Upright, or the Upright or Corrected Record. Now, check this out. This title was misread as Jasher, and at some point Jasher was treated as a proper name. However, the pronoun the, which is the Hebrew ha, never precedes proper names. Interesting. So Sapir Ha-Yasher, or Book of the Upright, isn't necessarily the Book of Jasher referred to in Samuel or in Joshua. They're telling you this right here in this first paragraph. You don't even have to read any further. In other words, they're telling you what you're getting right now is a book that was composed after biblical times and technically is not really a proper name, Jasher, because the title the, which is the Hebrew ha, H-A, like the priest Ha Kohen. Yeah, I know a little Hebrew. Surprised? Do you? That's the question. Is it necessary? That's even a bigger question. But let's not even go there. The Hebrew, the pronoun the, never precedes proper names. Title, yeah. Proper name, no. So if your name is Mike, you wouldn't be called the Mike. Does that make sense? So this can't be the Jasher. And this, I didn't make this up. This is the preface of this guy's book right here that he's wrote. Let's look at this. I don't want to talk too much. Let's read. There's also another spurious Book of Jasher published in 1750, in which Jasher is treated as the name of the author. Wow. Wow. Now they put a little disclaimer here, I guess in the next paragraph, to make you go ahead and buy the book, because anybody with common sense will go ahead and just put the book down, or they'll try to haggle the price from whatever the cover price is to 50 cents, because that's probably all the book is even worth, and that's just for the paper and printing coverage. But it says right here in this last paragraph, to be fair, they say this text, talking about the Book of Jasher, what they call the Book of Jasher, this text covers much of the same ground as the traditional Mosaic books of the Bible, from the creation of the world to the death of Moses, albeit with several minor variations. That right there is a bold-faced lie. Albeit with several minor variations. Well, let's see. Let's go to, according to this book, it has, I believe, 91 chapters. Different books of Jasher, depending on who translate them, can have anywhere between 37 and 111 chapters. But this particular one I'm looking at right now has 91 chapters. We're going to go into chapter number 16, what they call chapter 16. So the Book of Jasher, chapter 16. And we're going to go to one point. And this is where a particular brother went to prove his doctrine. Couldn't go into the book of Moses. Couldn't go into the books of the law and the prophets. He had to go here to this Book of Jasher, allegedly, quote unquote. Verse 11. And Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, the same was Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people with bread and wine, and they remained together in the valley of Melech. Adonizedek, verse 12. And Adonizedek, they're saying this is Melchizedek. Adonizedek blessed Abram, and Abram gave him a tenth from all that he had bought from the spoil of his enemies, for Adonizedek was a priest before God. So according to this book of Jasher, which the publishers and editors tell you is not the book of Jasher, according to this book of Jasher, this guy Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, the same was Shem. Wait a minute. Didn't Christ and the apostles point you back to Moses and the prophets? Well, how did Jasher have an understanding that Moses didn't have? Surely Moses would have told us about Melchizedek being Shem. We're going to actually read this and see if this is the case. But before we do this, I'm trying to think of the best way to do this, because we have two different records about Melchizedek. And let's just say, for argument's sake, the book of Jasher didn't call him Melchizedek, they call him Adonizedek. I'll give that to you. I'll even read and Melchizedek in the book of Jasher. I'll substitute Adonizedek for Melchizedek. So in the book of Jasher, chapter 16, verse 11 and 12, let's just say, and Melchizedek, king of Jerusalem, the same was Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people with bread and wine, and they remained together in the valley of Melech. And Melchizedek, quote unquote, blessed Abram, and Abram gave him a tenth from all that he had brought from the spoil of his enemies, for Melchizedek, quote unquote, was a priest before God. Here is the problem. Now, you can get puffed up thinking that you got some new revelation or some new doctrine. See, the book of Jasher tells you that this Melchizedek was Shem. So it was Shem that's Melchizedek. If anybody teaches you anything else, they need to read the book of Jasher. Well, I've read the book of Jasher. You messed up by telling me to read it. And it's online, and I can read it for free. And it's a question I want to ask the reasonable sisters and brothers in the listening audience, because the book does tell us, let us reason together.